hackle. And what we're going to be using for the middle hackle is dyed red badger. In the traditional pattern, it's natural badger, but for the Dusky Currys Red, I like to use the dyed red badger. I think it just gives that wee bit of extra colour to it, and it sort of spices it up. And as I say, these are whiting genetic badger capes, very nice to use. So really what we want to do is just select a feather that we think is going to be the right sort of size. There's two ways to tie it, sort of a shrimp pattern as well. The traditional way is actually having a longer front hackle and a shorter middle hackle, but it was actually a style popularised by Robert Gillespie, and what he does actually has a longer middle hackle and a shorter front hackle, and I prefer that. I think it just lets each of the three hackles move independently, so that's really the style that I like to use. So we just select a feather the right size, and then we just prepare that by taking off the surplus. The stalk there, and then just at the front I like to just snip off some of the feathers, and hopefully maybe you can see that there, but it just, by cutting off those fibres, you actually helps just to bind, when you're tying it in, helps to bind it in so it doesn't slip away. So that's really ready to go. So we just tie that in at the side, and then the way I double the hackle is just to use the back of a pair of scissors and just stroke gently down the back of the feather, and obviously it's the back of the scissors. You don't want to use the sharp edge. And then once you've done that, so that introduces the backward angle, just use your fingers to stroke it back, and then you're ready to tie it in. Just cut off that, and just get your hackle pliers again, and then we're just going to wind this hackle along with touching turns. And as you go, if you just stroke the feathers back with your fingers, and you can see now why I call it Dusky Curry. So you've got the red tips, and then you've got the badger centre, and it just gives a nice sort of dusky dark colour rather than just pure red or pure natural badger. Let's see, that's probably enough turns now. So I just I take off these fibres so that I'm tying in with a bare stalk. Just helps to tie it in a wee bit neater. So tie that off. And again, just keep the stalk underneath the fly. There we go. And then now same process in terms of the front body. So we're going to be tying it with, again, the oval silver. And then this time black floss. What you could do is you could actually change the thread at this point to black, but because I'm actually going to use a double layer of black floss, you're never going to see the red underlying thread, so you don't need to worry about that. So again, just lock that in like that. At this stage as well, we're going to be using black floss. This is the Danville's black floss. I find it one of the best floss. It's nice and shiny, gives a nice shiny finish, but also just a very nice floss to work with. And as I say, what you want to do is this, at this stage as well, is just be aware how much room you're actually leaving in front of the hook. A very common sort of mistake is not to leave yourself enough room, and then you're struggling to try to get a lot of materials in at the very last. So always just make sure you leave yourself enough room. So again, just the lock-in method, underneath, pull it through, and just tie it in. And as I say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a double layer of floss. So I'm going to go from front to back, and then from back to front, and that way you're never going to see that red thread. But what I want to also do here is, you can see I'm actually going slightly over the hackle. So it's a similar process or idea behind the tail. By actually doing a few turns over the hackle, it helps to bed in the hackle. It also gives it a bit more strength, so it's never going to go anywhere. So that's that, and then we just tie that off, and then we've got our rib. Just tie it off underneath the hook. Okay, and then the next part of the fly is to put some jungle cock on. And again, jungle cock can be one of those things that does slip around, so I always just put a wee bit of floss, or not floss, wax over the top of it. And then here's a couple of jungle cock eyes, and you can see I've already prepared these in, stripped them and got them ready to tie in. And you can tie them in separately, but I normally just tie them in together and just put them down on the fly, sort of judge the size or the length. A couple of loose turns just to judge them, and then you can work with them in terms of the exactly where you want them, and then once you're happy with this, with the placement, then you can tie them in. And you can see there, that's the way that they're tied in. The other thing I like to do is, you don't want your jungle cock to be coming off after you've cast it a few times. So again, I lock it in. So you just grab the jungle cock by the tips, and then just go back on yourself and tie them in. And basically, once you're doing that, they're never going to come off. So that's the jungle cock tied in. So really, that's us nearly finished the fly. Just the front hackle to go now. And again, what I'm using is one of these whiting badgers. This is a natural badger. Really are super capes to use. And what we want to do now is just to choose a feather the right size. I really just want to gauge. It's a wee bit small, that one. Different one is a cape I've used a few times, so it's all the good size feathers have been used. And really what I'm doing is just trying to judge one that's the right size. As I say, we want it to be slightly shorter and smaller than the previous, that one there. Will do. Okay, and it's the same process as with the red one. So we strip off the waist at the end, the front, and again do a few cuts at the front. It just helps to tie it in, and then we're ready to tie it just using the back of the scissors, stroke it back. Till we've got the right angle, and then use your fingers again just to help the thing that back. Stroke that back until it's the right angle, and that's us ready to tie in. Okay, and just wind that hackle on. As I say, the whiting really they're lovely hackles to use. I mean, they almost tie themselves. They're so nice to tie with. They're not the cheapest, but I think it's well worth spending the money on getting good hackles. It really does make a difference. One final turn. I think that should be us. And then you notice I like to turn the vise over and do a lot of turns just on the stock, just to make sure that's it's very secure and it's not going to come off. And then we just cut that there. And again, you can use your thumb, just your thumbnail, just to flatten that down so there's no bumps. So that's really our front hackle. And as you can maybe see as well, this is slightly the angle of it. The middle hackle slightly swept back, but with the front hackle I like to have it not just to swept back, so it's like, you know, it pulses. So that's really it. You can finish it just like that, or what I like to do is to give it a wee bit more of a trigger point. So I'm just going to tie that off, and then I'm going to put a little bit of red floss on the head. And what that does is just to give, as I say, a wee bit of extra trigger point. So we just get a red floss. This is fluorescent glow bright number 4, and we just tie that in as you would any other thread. So just flatten it out a wee bit before you tie it in, just makes it easier to tie, and just tie it in as you would normally tie it. And then you just really want to whip it off, finish it off as you normally would. So us. So that's really the Dusky Currys Red. As I say, it's just a variation on Pat Curry's original pattern, but one that just with spicing it up a wee bit, just using different materials, more modern materials, the bling in the tail, the fluorescent red wool, the badger dyed red badger in the middle hackle, and then the fluorescent red head. Just gives it that wee bit of an extra edge, and that's the Dusky Currys Red. Thank you.